At the same time, while the children are in Waldorf, obviously we have a curriculum, and especially in the primary school, what are the children learning? How are they learning? That's actually preparing them for life as a whole, whether they're within Waldorf or elsewhere, that they're able to adjust, but also that they're getting everything they need to get in Waldorf. So we'll welcome you, Sven, to take us through the first few years of Waldorf education, because at Mont Kenya Waldorf, we intend to go up to class 6 at the moment, and then build it up. But yeah, what can the parents expect in these 6 years? And if they were to transition, what can happen? So welcome. We look forward to hearing some insights and discussions.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. And welcome and good morning to all of you, or good evening if you're watching this as a recording. I've been quite intrigued by being given this particular theme today. And if you are watching this or joining this with this specific question, how can my child stop attending Waldorf Education? Then let me reassure you straight away that that's kind of built into the system from the start. Because when Waldorf Education first began just over 100 years ago, that question arose even before the school first opened its doors. It was quite a daring experiment in 1919 Germany. So there was no guarantee that this would actually work. And the question was, what do we do if it doesn't work and our children have to go back into the mainstream then? And Rudolf Steiner, who founded the education, then said, well, we'll have to make sure that every few years there's a crossover point. So he at the time said, after class 3, after class 6, after class 8, the children should be able to transition seamlessly into the state system. So at the age of 10, at the age of 12, and at the age of 14. In fact, in those days, mandatory school stopped when children were 14. So that was always the setup in any case. But of course, there's a deeper question than that, isn't there? Not everybody wants to wait that long, and that was just, I think, in the spirit of the idea rather than a practical piece of advice. Because while we quite consciously do things very differently from the mainstream school, it's not part of the recipe of Waldorf to do things more slowly. Different isn't the same as slower. You may well find that the way you've got to know Waldorf Education is distinguished by the fact that we don't hothouse children. And I'm going to show you a few examples of what that means. But I don't think Waldorf Education defines itself as being slower. In 1923, Steiner was approached by some people in England who wanted to found a Waldorf school as well. At that stage, there were only two, one in Germany and one in Holland. And they said, we want to make a Waldorf school in England. What do we need to make sure we get right from the start? And he said, the most important thing you need to make sure is that your school is a good school. You can't play at being a school. You can't be amateurs. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to gain the respect of the educational establishment around you. It's probably fair to say that not every school has succeeded in doing that over the last 100 years. But at the same time, it's important to remember that that was there all along. We really want to do a good job. And we do so quite proudly differently from other schools. As you're probably used to by now, I'm going to show you pictures and images, and I'm going to share my screen with you quite a bit of the time. And I'm going to ask you a few questions because there's so few of us that it's really a useful thing for me to open some questions up to you. It's always difficult when there's 80 or so. So let me start with that. I don't usually do this, that I put the poster for a talk right on the first slide, but I was just intrigued by this, yeah? This idea of transitioning out of the system. And of course, the first thing that comes to my mind is, well, why would you want to? What is it that could get you, apart from having to move house to an area without, what is it that one might make you want to turn your back on the system? What might disappoint you, for example, in what you found? And I want to go there a little bit with you to see when you came into the system, or when you're about to come into the Waldorf school, what is it that you've turned your back on in the state system? And what is it that you might find that either attracts you or in the end repels you? And can we help with that, essentially? So let's have a look at this poster here. This is an American Waldorf school poster. And I'd just like to open up to you to start with. Let's start with the first question. What's attractive about this? Can we gather that a little bit? What do we like? Imagine the people who sat down, let's say, let's make a poster that parents can put up or that schools can put up. This is what we're going to put on it. What were they thinking? What do you think? Jess?
I'm thinking about the holistic child, the whole child. The whole child sort of experiencing an education, and obviously kind of even sort of now looking at your image, it's triggering something. The different stages that a child goes through. So really focusing on play at the beginning, but also not losing that, and a lot of imagination. But really, for me, it's the whole child, so that nothing and the child is ignored. The cognitive is really addressed, the socio-emotional and the physical.
Okay.
That's what attracted me. And I have to say one more thing, the material. Yeah. The really sort of, and that it fits into the environment, but not kind of, we're part of the environment and not excluded from the environment. And that the children really can feel that and connect to their environment. So you can see that in the resources, but also in sort of the things that are done. You
know, when the people put this poster together, why did they put the first of these two sentences? Why doesn't it just say go play? Why did they feel they had to include that top sentence about the homework? What were they thinking? It's sending a signal, isn't it, to parents? Can you put that narrative into words? Who is it trying to attract?
Parents who are used to the homework and want to understand what homework means, perhaps in a Waldorf context.
Yeah. Is this parents who can't wait for their child to come home and start sitting down at the desk and doing more and more work? The people who made this poster have identified a target group, haven't they? And the target group, I think, is parents who are concerned about the effect that an overload of academic work has on their child. Yeah, so the child that is in school until 4 o'clock every afternoon and then comes home and has an hour or two of homework. And while that is all done with the best of intentions, because of course, while the younger children are, the more learning they can absorb, many parents see the effect that kind of approach has on their children, and they are looking for something different, and they might feel attracted by this kind of poster. Oh, good, I can breathe out. I can play for homework. You know, and of course, most children would probably go for this one too. So if you ask the children, what's your favorite homework? It's sometimes, you know, I made the mistake of asking my own pupils what their favorite lesson was. And almost invariably, there were a few children who said break time. You know, you can't avoid that kind of answer because they're children. You know, of course they love running around and playing with their friends more than anything else. So on the other hand, though, there might have been critical voices in that round creative table that came up with this poster and said, yeah, but we don't want us to send the wrong message. So why did Workers Worry as an advertisement for Waldorf Education? Maybe those of you who are parents, what might you be concerned about when you see this?
What me sometimes concerns is when I look at the typical academic system, and perhaps here, the Waldorf School is here, and I sometimes feel that the Waldorf School is remaining here. You refer to 1919. The world is changing, but the Waldorf School seems to be very closed and not so open for any type of change. And I sometimes wished that the advantages of different systems could be combined and go towards each other instead of being on different positions. And
yes.
That's my concern. One of my concerns.
Thank you. That's a really good answer. I thank you very much for saying that. After I had been in the Waldorf system for 30 years, I returned to the UK after spending 8 years abroad, and I joined a Waldorf state school. There is a state-funded Waldorf school in the UK, only one, which means that all the money comes from the state and all the rules come from the state as well. And within that, the Waldorf school is trying to be a Waldorf school. So I learned to understand and apply mainstream parameters and to try and make my idea of education fit somehow in with that. So I'm going to, in today's talk, I'm going to refer quite a few times to your question. You know, what is it? Is there a possible crossover? And is it a closed system? So keep this advert in your mind for a moment when we look at a different kind of advert for a different kind of school. I don't know this school. It's clearly somewhere in the Middle East, I would imagine, from the writing, the font there, probably in Dubai or something like that. What were the people thinking who created this poster? What were they trying to appeal to in parents?
Creating little Einsteins.
So go a little bit deeper into that, Jessica. So what does that mean? Well,
it's interesting that they picked Einstein because he was actually so closely connected to sort of Waldorf, which they probably don't know. But because Einstein said some very interesting things, I remember, about actually if you want to learn maths, that you need to have an imagination. But this is, when I look at this without that knowledge, it actually just says academics to me. And it's the way the child is dressed. And even though they're trying to be a little bit funny and childlike, it seems very, very sort of, we're going to make sure that your child becomes an Einstein.
Yeah. It's a startling contrast to the previous picture, isn't it? It's almost 180 degrees. Although the words on the poster are, you know, inspire, innovate, initiate. Yes, absolutely. That's, you know, they could come from a Waldorf School's website, because they're positive buzzwords. And yet we're taking your 8-year-old child and we're putting it into a suit and giving it a tie, and even photoshopping a mustache on it to make really clear that your child is an old white man before they've even reached puberty. So there's a subtext here, which is designed to appeal to a particular kind of understanding of what learning is. So what do we want a school to be and do? So those of you who are parents, current parents, most of us are, of course, or have been parents for a while. When this question comes, or if this question comes, those of you who consider Waldorf education are by definition people who think about it a little more deeply. Of course, you could just assume, like my parents did, school is just something that is there. So, you know, when my child is old enough, they just go. And they go to the school that is nearest or most practical. And I'm glad they're not home anymore all day long. And, you know, they just run with the system. And the very fact that you're here suggests already that you're kind of prepared to step outside that particular tramway and think, okay, I'm going to assess this first. So can you share with us what your idea was? You know, what made you wonder which school is the right one for my child? What do you want a school to be and to do for your child? Feel free to give quite a personal answer to this. What made you wonder?
I think for us, our eldest son, we think he's dyslexic, and he's quite a quirky, sensitive kid, I guess. So we were a bit worried that with mainstream schooling, he might be left behind a little bit, I guess, which is why we were thinking Waldorf might suit his learning style. Yeah, and also kind of help him with that emotional side as well, I guess. That.
Would you mind, but you don't have to if you don't want to, but would you mind unpacking the left behind concept a little more?
Yeah. I mean, I guess because it's bigger classes, it's reaching those benchmarks and the reward system, which I'm not totally against the reward system for achieving this and achieving that. And then I guess I was worried that if he's constantly not achieving these goals and not getting the reward, that he'll stop putting the effort, I guess, to learn, and he'll feel like he's not as, you know, quick as the others at learning to read and all that. So I guess, and it's that massive knock to his confidence, which you don't want that to set up for the rest of his school and life. You know, you don't want him to feel like he's
Thank you.
Not up to scratch, because he is.
Yes, that's a wonderful way you phrased it just now. You don't want to make him feel that he's not up to scratch.
Yeah.
Note that you probably, without thinking about it, didn't say, we don't want him not to be up to scratch. But you said we don't want him to feel that he's not. And that is a really massive difference. Because what you're concerned about is his mental and emotional state, which will, as you quite rightly say, set him up for life in this. And this is what I want to focus on a little bit in this session this morning: the price we pay, or we're prepared to pay, for creating little Einsteins, and how we can avoid that without simply going to the easy, you know, snazzy picture of, well, all you have to do is play. So let's juxtapose this picture with one that would certainly be quite familiar to people who've attended a Waldorf kindergarten, for example. So, you know, this is certainly before Sylvia joined primary school, this would have been a very familiar kind of scene. Although maybe you wouldn't have been chopping carrots. I think this is a European kindergarten. I don't know what it is that you would have been chopping. But can you just consider for a moment what it is that the children on this left picture are doing? Let's start with what they're doing. Do you all get a clear picture of this? So these are 3 to 5-year-old children, I would say, and each of them has a knife, a sharp knife. And they've been given, I think it's carrots, maybe other vegetables as well. I think maybe there's a bit of apple there as well, or parsnip, or cucumber. So they're preparing break in some form. They're making a salad probably. And they've each got their little chopping boards. So this is children doing stuff. And I don't know if you're familiar with educational philosophy as a discipline. But there was an educationalist called John Dewey who lived about 100 years ago. And he said, if you want children to learn, give them something to do, not something to learn. I'll repeat that. If you want children to learn, give them something to do, not something to learn. Can you think what he was trying to say with that? Nothing to do with Waldorf initially. Because you see, when we do something, we engage our brain. And when we engage our brain, learning takes place anyway. In fact, for most of us, learning even takes place when we don't engage our brain, because we're human beings and we can't stop learning. But can we focus on that for a moment? I wonder if you could share with us, if you picture yourself in this situation as a fly on the wall in this kindergarten, in this Waldorf kindergarten, what are the children learning right now? Can we make a list of the skills they are practicing in this activity? Feel free to unmute yourself and just call it out.
Yeah, coordination, I would say, and maybe not fine motor skills, but coordination.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
I'd say
like
fine motor skills are part of that. Sorry, Alison.
I was going to say, like, portions. You know, they're dividing their carrot or their fruit or whatever into 4 or 5 or whatever it is.
Do you think the teacher would have said to them, "I want cubes of 5 millimeters"?
I don't know.
So how do they know? How do they know what size to divide the pieces into?
Maybe it's looking at the whole piece and saying, okay, we need 4 of these, or we need 3 of these. Cut this into 3 pieces.
It happens, doesn't it? They look to the left and to the right, and it just flows. Yeah, they go with the flow, exactly. Yeah. Yes. What else?
I'll say communication.
Very good. Do you want to unpack that a bit, Christine? What in terms of communication?
Communicating to each other, as well as just applying some skill, like they are connecting with a life skill that they'll use in communicating, and as well as working with each other.
It's multitasking as well, isn't it? We're talking to each other while we're working. We're staying in one place. But we can also look at the little girl on the left. You know, the way her tongue comes out between her lips, she's totally focused. She's not listening to the boys onto her side. She's completely focused on using that pizza cutter. She's probably a little too small for a sharp knife, so she's giving a pizza rolling cutting thing for cutting the cucumbers. So there is differentiation here as well. Imagine for a moment when you first came towards the Waldorf School and you might have met Sylvia, and you would have asked her, "Sylvia, can you describe to me what you will do with my child when it comes to Mont Kenya Waldorf Kindergarten?" And Sylvia would have said, "Well, we get 5 children and we give each of them a sharp knife." And now look at this, you know, does that image conjure up this image? It's just, I think this is so wonderful because there is so much that is going on here. And each of those skills that you're seeing being embedded here is a transferable skill as well. Yeah, so the fine motor skills, the dexterity, the communication skills, the discipline as well. So none of these children clearly is in any danger of picking up their knife and running around the room with it, because they've learned this. Otherwise, you wouldn't be seeing them like this. Obviously, kindergarten teachers keep children safe. So if this is a possible scenario, that means these children are already in the zone where they can be safe and trusted with this sort of thing. And I must tell you, I know I'm in this system and I'm a practitioner here, but this is what I'd want my 4 and 5-year-old to be like around dangerous objects. Yeah, I'd want them to be as relaxed and as secure and as confident and as safe as the children on this picture in all these things. That doesn't mean, of course, that they won't learn academically too, because these children are kindergarten children, not primary school children. And so let's look at some primary school children. Now, these two, I apologize for the Eurocentric image I'm giving you here, but this is because these are children from my last class 1. So the last time I had my own class as a class teacher in a school, I took a few photos of them every year, quite often, and this was after about 3 or 4 months of being in school. And so they're engaged in a task that they're sharing together, a combination of drawing and writing, if I remember correctly. And looking at that, it brought something back to my mind, which has become known as the knowing-doing gap. We all know what we should be doing, but we don't. Well, one of the biggest sources of frustration is our inability to do what we know that we should be doing. Whether that's, losing weight or doing the washing up or sitting down to study or getting up and half an hour earlier in the morning. It's not enough, is it, to understand something? It somehow needs to embed itself in us. And if we can manage to close the knowing-doing gap, then we become effective people. So not just people who think and feel the right thing, but people who are able to transmit that into the world and thereby affect other people, affect change, affect differences in the world around them. And I guess as a parent, I'd want my child to do that. I don't want my child just to be happy as in their own little bubble. I want them to be able to communicate and go out and do things, change the world so that it suits them a little bit better. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for my children to be given a chance to apply their agency, their ability to impact what happens around them. And so in order to do that, they need to learn certain things at school and from me. And these are among the things, these 5 things are among the things that they need to learn. So they need to be able to focus on things. So I'm just bringing back this little picture, the little girl here on the left. Yeah, there's stuff going on to her left, interesting stuff. They're big boys having an interesting conversation, maybe making jokes, but she's able to focus on the task in hand, although she's only about 3. So put away the distractions. I've got to do something now. That's a transferable skill if ever there was one. Also, I have to be able to be in charge of my emotional state. So let's say that I have an important meeting with a client in my business world, maybe a new client who is going to do good things for my business. And then that morning, I've had a clash with my teenage daughter, who's screamed at me all sorts of unfair things because I don't let her go out with her mates this evening. And she slammed the door and the door smashed because she slammed it so hard and there was glass all over the floor. And I couldn't stop to clear it up because otherwise I would have been late for this meeting with my new client. But I'm really high on adrenaline after just driving away from that sort of scene and leaving the rest of my family to deal with it. And in that state, I now have to meet a new client and do all the new things I need to do with new clients. So if I'm an effective person, I'm able to now take that emotional turmoil in which I've just been and put it to one side and address it later. And I can't allow it to catch me. If I allow it to catch me, then that's also okay, but I probably won't manage to do what I intend to do, which is to get a new client for my company. It's also important that I'm not just confident in myself, but I'm also able with my voice and my mannerisms to communicate that. So I need to learn this at school. I need to be given chances to stand up in front of others and demonstrate what I can do. Not just be able to do things. And this is one of the great chapters that really needs to be opened, I think, in the future, maybe in the next 10 or 20 years. For centuries, we've focused too much on children who were really good at stuff. Yeah, so we've put them at the front of classrooms, for example. Yeah, and we've put children who are slow at things at the back of classrooms traditionally. You know, so we've really privileged high achievers for centuries in education. Now we're beginning to know a new narrative where we, quite rightly, put our focus on children who struggle for whatever reason. So we look at neurodiversity questions, we look at special educational needs, and certainly, as if you're a teacher embedded in any kind of school at the moment, that's all your CPD is going to be about that. All the input you get, the extra training will be about how to do justice to children that otherwise would have been forgotten. But that leaves another group of children. And those are the children who are quietly capable, but are lacking confidence. You know, people, and maybe some of you belong to that group, who were never seen at school. And the only reason you weren't seen at school is because you weren't the kind who stood up and drew attention to yourself. Because you were talented, you were good, you had something to offer. But somehow between the bright ones and the naughty ones, you sort of became invisible. I know that in every class I've ever taught, there was quite a substantial number of children like that. And that my task with these children is not to make them confident because they know that they're good. My task as a teacher is to somehow help them to demonstrate that they're good, to create situations for them in which it's safe for them to share what they like. And I remember one particular boy in particular. He was amazing because he had a very difficult background. He had been rejected by his parents, so he was a looked after child in a family of foster parents, and that had caused him quite a deep trauma. So he had quite an amazing variety of talents, but he kept them under a bushel for, you know, unless one helped him sort of uncover that. And I remember being really touched when, on a regular basis in middle school, grade 6, 7, 8, when we had our weekly circle where everybody could say whatever they wanted to say at the end of the week, it was his habit to put up his hand and say what he had particularly enjoyed in that week's learning. Now imagine a teenage boy, a pre-teenage boy, having the guts to, you know, in front of 30 peers to say, I thought that was really interesting. I thought about it lots on the way home, without being nerdy or without being frightened of being seen as somebody who likes school. So he had stepped beyond the place where he was worried about being put in a box, because he felt confident enough in himself to say, I like learning, to his peers. And I've never forgotten that, the lesson I learned there, to pay attention to the quiet ones. The fourth thing is my ability to plan out what I'm going to do and then not get incapacitated when that plan doesn't work out. So all of us who work with people know that we need at least a plan B, because it never works out, does it? If you're a nurse, a teacher, a kindergarten person, even if working in a big company, you want to do something and then somebody else does something with the best of intentions that derails my plan, I need to come up with an alternative. Effective people have more than one plan up their sleeves. And finally, I can discipline myself and stick with it. Yeah, I've set out to do something and I'm going to continue it until it's finished. So this isn't Waldorf knowledge. This is essential psychology. You'll find this in any business self-help book. But for me as a teacher in any kind of school, but particularly because I put the child at the center in Waldorf Education, I do justice to my job if I take these things seriously. That's really what I'm after. I want the children who leave the school in which I teach, to be able to embody this for the rest of their lives. And I say deliberately for the rest of their lives, because should these 5 qualities be a preparation for this? If you work in the mainstream, that's your narrative. Yeah. You do all these things, but you get told again and again by the software that you buy to assess to assess your children's progress, by your line managers, by the trustees of the school, by the government, that we do all this, we cultivate those 5 qualities so that the children are able to do this, pass exams. And the exam system is a misunderstanding of a psychological truth. The psychological truth is that it's very motivating for a child to know that they're getting better. It's called ipsative assessment. 2 weeks ago, I couldn't do it. Now I can. That's a really motivating thing. Yeah, that enables me to want to learn more. But to then put a series of goals in front of a child and say, make sure you get those specific ones, narrows that down to a pass-fail situation that is completely alien to life. And I want to show you something out of my personal professional experience. I mentioned that I worked in a mainstream school for a couple of years after having been a Waldorf teacher for 30 years. And one of the things that happened there was a regular resort to cognitive ability testing. So otherwise known as CAT. Yeah. So what are a child's CAT scores? And I hope you can see the screen well enough to engage with these for a moment. Okay. So we're going to go through this one by one. I really want you to have this exercise. So the first one is mathematical ability. You have a series of numbers here, 5, 20, 35, 50, 65, 80. Which one is the next number and why? Can one of you answer this one? This is the easiest, so if you jump in quickly, you've done your bit.
It's 95, right? Because it's going up by 15.
Very good. Yes. So the right answer, and you've reasoned correctly. You've seen the pattern. Yeah. So I'm testing. Can the child see the pattern? It's going up by 15. Okay. Let's take the one with the blue shapes for a moment. This is all the instruction you're going to get. I'm not explaining this to you. What's the right answer?
Was it C?
Tell us why. Tell us why.
Because it's just the reflection, the mirror image of the triangle.
So it's the right answer, Alison. Thank you. Can you explain the process at the top that is illustrated with those 4 symbols?
The first one's the mirror image, or the hole, and then it's showing you that it's 2 triangles making the hole. Don't know what the third one's about. I guess it's just showing you that that's the answer that you're looking for, and then it's asking you the last one. Okay. What's the answer?
I mean, it's quite amazing that you came to the right answer without understanding what the symbols mean. I'll tell you what the symbols mean. So it's a blue sheet of paper. The instruction is to fold it over so that it forms a triangle. And then you take a hole punch and you make holes in each of the 3 corners. And when you unfold it, what will be the pattern? And as you quite rightly identify, C is the correct answer. Okay. But this isn't called non-verbal reasoning. So you don't get explanations with this. Yeah, that's all you get. Okay. Let's go to the next one, the verbal reasoning. So you've got the word pentagon and an arrow that points to the word sides. And then you get the word foot and an arrow that points to what? It's one of those 5 words there. So what sides is to pentagon, something else is to foot. What is it? I don't blame you for being confused, by the way. Anybody want to have a go? Don't worry if you get it wrong. I'll relieve your tension.
Someone has said toes. Actually,
yes,
in
yes.
the chat, someone said toes.
Oh, thank you for putting it in the chat. The correct answer is toes, or let's say the desired answer is toes, but is that even logical? Think about it for a moment. A pentagon has sides on 5 sides, doesn't it? A foot has toes only at one end. So if I approach this with logic, I'd have to say none of those 5 things actually make sense. So I'm supposed to be using my logical reasoning, my verbal reasoning, but actually what I need to do is put that on one shelf and instead think, what do they want me to answer? Not what is the logical answer, but what do they want me to answer? Because they've obviously not thought this through properly when they created the question. So that's quite a sophisticated bit of reasoning. Let's do the last one. So you've got 3 symbols. So the top left one relates to the top right one in the way that the bottom left one relates to which? So spatial reasoning, this one.
Is it B?
Can you tell us why?
Is that right? Because it's the white, right? It's the white part of the shape from the top. Same shape for the bottom, but side on.
Side on, exactly. Yeah.
Side on.
So what we've done is we've taken the white shape and turned it 90 degrees. Yeah, and that's where you get it. Okay. So well done. So this is in a way it's quite fun, isn't it? It's a bit, you know, apart from the one that is a bit stupid, the verbal one where they didn't think it through. Did you spot when you cast your eye over the page what age children this is directed at? Last line of the paragraph.
7 to 9?
Yes. 7 to 9-year-olds are given this without additional explanation. So when they're doing it, they're sitting like this. Yeah. These children are older, but it's a test. It's a formal test. It's not something you engage in the way that I now engaged with you, in a sort of gentle quizzing kind of way. But you get given a piece of paper and then you have to do these things. And something that all these questions have in common is you either get them right or you get them wrong. So you either pass or you fail, which is what you need to do if you want to create a numerical score at the end. So one phrase that I came across again and again in that school when we were discussing children is, what was her CAT score? Yeah, what was her CAT score in year 4? What was it in year 7? Because this is a regular thing. And the reason this is relevant is this. If you're in a mainstream school, this is all England, by the way, but I know this is relevant to Kenya because the English education system is still a massive influence on the Kenyan state education system. That much I've been able to find out. So if you have if you're at the blue level of the CAT scores in Key Stage 2, which is primary school age, yeah, early primary school age, below 11, then through the years, you're going to rise to getting A-star results in your GCSEs, okay? So you're in a predicted bracket. So if, for example, you're a slightly dreamy child, and you're looking at these shapes and you start coloring them in or something like that, because you think, oh, what the hell, what do they want me to do? I'm just going to change blue to purple and see, and try my luck on this. Then you're probably in the orange thing where you get 3B or below, which means that your teachers are looking at the 10-year-old child and they're seeing a 16-year-old failing his GCSEs. That's the narrative here. This thing is called a flight path. Yeah. So in other words, are you all going to be on the flight path that the school, have predicted for you? I'm already creating a narrative about you on the basis of your scores in these tests. And now I need to tell you about Jacob. Jacob was a pupil in that class that I showed you 2 children of earlier on. And when I came to the school, Jacob was introduced to me as a bit of a special child, because quite unusually in the Waldorf system, he had to repeat the first year. That hardly ever happens, that a child goes all through class 1 and then the teachers say, I think he maybe needs to do class 1 again. And the reason was that he was incredibly dreamy. They found that out by asking him at about Easter time in the playground during lunchtime to point out that his classmates in the playground and say their names. And they found out that even after 2 terms, he didn't know all the names of the children who were in his own class. That's how dreamy he was. Yeah. So it was clear that somehow he had drifted on a cloud all through this first year without really connecting to anything. So they gave him to me and said, let's just have him, he's a year older than everyone else, doesn't matter. Let's just have him do class 1 again. And then he was clearly, he carried on being dreamy. He's still dreamy now. He's 21 now. And he showed very clear signs of dyslexia. So he found it quite difficult not to reverse numbers and letters, for example. His handwriting was something that he struggled with. But then when we were in grade 4 and we were on a class trip, one of the children had an accident on his bike. So we were on a bike trip in the forest, and one of the children fell off his bike and fell so badly on his head that he broke his helmet. His head was all right because he was wearing a helmet, but his helmet was broken. Now, according to the law, we couldn't carry on because he didn't have a helmet. And I can't, as a teacher, take children on a bike ride if they don't wear helmets. And quite rightly so, as this incident showed. So we had a picnic to decide what to do. And so I had a mobile phone, and I rang his parents and I said, can you bring us a helmet, please, so that we can carry on? But of course, Jacob didn't know that. So while we were all eating, Jacob disappeared into the forest. And he came out 20 minutes later, and he had woven a bicycle helmet out of ferns, completely with some fronds to tie it tightly. So he'd woven some branches and he'd wrapped ferns around them, and it actually fitted that boy fantastically. And this is what a dyslexic child will do, you see. They will think outside the box. And everybody in the class went, wow, Jacob, you're such a cool guy to have in the class, because he is a problem solver. 2 years later, at the age of 12, I'd planned quite an expensive class trip. So I was going to take this class of German school children to England for 2 weeks. And this was going to be expensive. In fact, it was going to cost 650 euros, which is really a lot of money. Even for, wealthy German parents, it's not to be sneezed at. So I said to the children, look, this is going to be, your parents have been saving for this for years, okay? I want each of you to make a contribution. I want each of you to earn 100 euros as part of that and contribute it to the class trip, because it's your trip. Your parents don't get anything out of it. the least you can do is earn 100 euros, give them to your parents to show that you've made a contribution. And it was the Easter holidays. And I said, you know, you've got 3 weeks off. See if you can't walk a neighbor's dog, you know, whatever it is you do, babysit or so. Please try and take this seriously. So each of the kids did whatever they went to do. A week into the holidays, Jacob rang me. And he said, I've earned the money, what do I do next? And I said, well done, Jacob, really good. But if you've already earned some money now in a week, that's brilliant. So you could just earn some more because, you know, you've only earned 100 and your parents need 650. And I know your parents aren't rich. And he said, no, I've earned the 650, but I had so much fun. So what can I do next? And I said, you're joking, right? I don't earn 650 euros a week. What did you do? And it turns out this is what he did. He was quite good at circus skills. He was a good juggler. And he had one of those great big balls, about 70, I'm just going to stop the share for a moment. So 70 centimeters in diameter, a hard ball. And so he took his juggling balls and he took a tape recorder or CD player, and he took that great big ball and he put them all into a pram. And with that pram, he went onto a train. And with that train, he went to the next town. And in the pedestrian area of that town, he set himself up. He put a carpet down. He put the ball on the carpet. He stood up on the ball, balancing. He switched on the CD player and he started juggling. So here was this 12-year-old boy standing on this ball, juggling. And he's very cute, yeah, Jacob. And he was then. I don't know what he looks like now, but when he was 12, he was very cute. So instead of giving him sort of 10-cent pieces, you know, people were putting euros and 5-euro notes into his hat. And he did this for an hour and a half. Then he packed up his money, went back on the train, went to the next town and did it again there. This is quite a network of small towns where we used to live. And he earned 150 euros a day. So after 5 days, you know, he had more than he needed. So I was just blown away by his resilience and resourcefulness. And I said to him, well, what would you like to do next? And he said, well, can I carry on doing this and then give the money to people who haven't earned theirs? Yeah, if anybody comes back from the holidays and they haven't managed, then they can have some of mine. That is Waldorf Education. Yeah, this is somebody who would have failed those CAT scores miserably, would have been dabbed a failure, would have not thrived in the system at all. And this is what Waldorf Education allowed him to do. So this question of how do Waldorf pupils come out into the world when they leave school? Well, here you've got an example. Yeah, this 12-year-old boy. I mean, I knew this when he did this thing with the cycle helmet. I knew this is not somebody I'm ever going to have to worry about. Yeah, I think he's working with people with disabilities now. He's done a training as a social therapist, and he's working in a school for children who need to be looked after in a special way. And I'm sure they're going to love everything that he has to offer, and I hope that he loves what he's doing as well. I'd like to take this into a slightly different direction now. Because one of the questions that were posed for the theme for this talk was sports. And I hope it's okay if I go for another 10-15 minutes and go slightly beyond the hour. I hope that's okay for you. Because you've probably heard about this or read about this already, that in class 5 in the Waldorf system, we celebrate the Olympic Games, partly because ancient Greece forms part of the curriculum at that time. So they learn about that. And this is quite an embodied way of channeling that. So what you see here is Waldorf pupils from Switzerland, actually. This is taking place in Switzerland, meeting on a sunny June afternoon, sometime in midsummer, and going through a series of Olympic Games. And they're competing with each other quite ambitiously, as you can see. There's all sorts of stuff going on in here that is clearly children wanting to achieve. Yeah, these are not children being nice and hippie-ish to each other and saying, no, we're not in favor of competition. You know, I'd much rather you win, you know, you take it. They're not like that at all. So they're wrestling there on the left. What you don't immediately see with the girl in the middle picture is the little dart. Can you see it? The dart that she's just thrown in the top left corner. So of course she wants the dart to get to the center. Yeah, that's what she's after. Of course, the children on the right-hand side want to be the ones who win the tug of war. Of course, the girl on the left wants to jump as far as she can. And of course, the children on the right want to win the chariot race. So there's a real spirit of achievement that is in these children because that's their children. Yeah, children love competition. And it's not true that we define ourselves as a system through being non-competitive. We recognize, I think, that there is a value in that and that it's a natural need. What is different is that we don't necessarily define ourselves through the success or failure in this. This whole narrative of success and failure is just not human. It assumes that at some point we have arrived, we've done it, we're there. And you know, you and I, we are all adults. We know that that's not true. It's, you know, I've never come to the end of a day and thought, I've arrived. There's always stuff left to do. And so if I live in a narrative of failure and success, I actually only cause myself mental anguish and nothing else. So this is an American piece of gym education software. So, you know, I've got the names down on the left. And now I've got this whole range of athletics, basketball, cricket, dance, football, gymnastics, and so on. And I can now give grades for all these things in terms of their effort and their achievement and the comparative value against the average level of the other children. So this is something that gym teachers, games teachers in the mainstream use in order to track the value of the engagement of children. Yeah, so we have in this gray area, we have grades for outwitting opponents, for accurate replication of skills, for performing at max level, for exercising safely. And whether you do this well or not is expressed in a number letter kind of formula. So this is how we measure these things. And I kind of think, why? Why do we need to do that? Surely as a teacher, I can see whether a child is engaging themselves or not. Do I really need to narrow it down to this? And I came across this article here. You don't have to read it all, but I'm happy to share this with you, or I can send it to the school and they can share it with you. This is an article from 2018. And it shows that a third of the parents who took part in this study, which was supported by the British government, said that learning how to manage their child's anxiety is now more important to them than their academic success. Yeah, a third of the parents, 1 in 3 parents, thinks, actually, I'm more concerned about my child's mental health than about their academic success. 63% saying it's just as important. And the study found, this is the depressing bit, the study found to combat school stress, 56% of parents now practice mindfulness with their child at home to try and ease their mind about the daily stresses and strains. Why do I find that depressing? If this is what school does to children, then why not change the way school works? Why should parents have to teach their children yoga to de-stress them instead of changing the school system so that they don't get stressed in the first place? This is what worries me here. Yeah. So this is the British government sponsoring a research like this and then saying, oh yes, let's bring mindfulness into schools so that the unhealthy, the de-healthifying, sorry for the word creation, the de-healthifying effect of school is balanced out through doing a bit of mindfulness or meditation every day. 77% saying most of their students, this is teachers, saying most of their students have experienced anxiety about school life. That's a shocking statistic. And what might even be more shocking is that it's from 2018, so this is pre-COVID. This has probably got worse through online, through having to engage online and not having the buffer of my friends to the left and right, who are, you know, who I can turn to and roll my eyes if the teacher is particularly boring or annoying. So even that is taken away from me. And we really need to look at the systematic approach to education. Because of time, I'm not going to get into this in detail, but I want to, especially those of you who work in the school, I'd want to show this to you, because I believe strongly in creating meaningful data in observing children. It's important that we take measure of the progress children make, but I don't believe in measuring that on the basis of CAT scores and things like that. I think we need to have a good professional look at the way children engage with their learning. And these 7 areas are one of the ways we can do that. We can have a look if children show persistence, if they show initiative, if they're aware of other people's needs in the classroom. And schools that I mentor, I give this to say, can you engage with this as a staff about twice a term for every child in the class? And the way you do this is by giving a numerical score to each of these areas. I'm not against numerical scores at all, but data needs to be meaningful data. It needs to be respectful of the human being that is in front of us and not reduce them to a pass-fail algorithm. So here we have a look at, let's take a look at a child and call her Sarah. And look at the first one there, care and presentation, or the second one. It says here, children take pride in producing their best effort. They care for their work and present it neatly, beautifully, and reverently. It's clearly an important skill to learn, transferable skill. So does Sarah do this occasionally, or does she do it frequently? That would give a certain score. How about in different subjects? How is that different in handwork, for example, from arithmetic? Now I learn something, especially if I do it over time, and I see, is she making progress in those areas where she scores low? Is she gradually bringing up her score? That is not a pass-fail situation. That's a descriptor situation, and it's easy to implement. You know, I mean, Nanyuki has small classes, but I'm used to systems where I work with 30 students in my class. And then I need to find an effective system to do this. And I think this system is very effective and efficient at the same time. I'd like to finish with another real life story, if I may. When it comes to class 6, your task as a teacher is to teach your children business math. So they learn profit loss calculations, they learn percentages, they learn how to do basic bookkeeping and to apply value to things and to work with that value. And normally what we do in the Waldorf School setting is that we imagine a sort of business, like a garage or something like that, where people have to buy and sell things and pay wages and pay taxes. And I thought we could go one better with this particular class because it was my 3rd one, and we made a real company. So real money went into this. Each of the children invested 20 euros, and I did too. So we had 660 euros starting capital. And we founded a company that had as its business to supply break time snacks to the rest of the school. So we made those organic, delicious rolls every day fresh. And children were in charge of different parts of the business. So the part of the business we needed most children for was to actually prepare these things every day. And this had to happen while the lessons were going on. So this kitchen was in the classroom. And these children had to work really quietly to not disturb the rest of the class. The first 3 weeks we devoted to learning our craft. So all the children had to have a health and hygiene certificate. We needed to learn basic things about bookkeeping and all that. And then we specialized. Some children became chefs, so they did this, and there were 3 groups of them rotating, so they didn't do this every day. There was a shopping group that bought the ingredients fresh every morning on their way to school. There was a bookkeeping group that handed out the money and collected the money. It was all done on a cash basis. And so everybody had their task. And there was a vending group that then sold the products at break time. And we ran this business for about half a year. After about 3 months, we'd started making a profit. So we had to recoup our investment because, of course, we had to buy, we had T-shirts made. We had to buy kitchen materials, utensils, all this kind of stuff to be hygienic with. So having done all that, after 3 months, we were turning a profit. It was a modest profit because we were using high quality ingredients. We are selling these sandwiches for 1.50 each, and they cost us about €1 to make. So this wasn't cheap stuff. But of course, it accumulated because it was a successful business. And after, I think, after 4 months, we had the first payout. And then each child received their share of the profits. And they were quite surprised at that. Because I said, well, what shall we do with the money? And they couldn't agree. Some of them said, let's use it for a class trip. Others said, let's donate it to a good cause. 1 or 2 even had the bravery to say, well, I want to keep my money. So in the end, because I couldn't make the rules, I was just a part shareholder in this. In the end, I said, okay, in that case, I'm going to give you each your share and you can decide what to do. And I'll never forget the boy who sat there with his 15 euros in his hands and said, does that mean I can go and buy sweets now on the way home for 15 euros? And I said, well, yes, if that's the decision you make, then go for it. You have that possibility. And you see one girl in here on this picture. She's posing as a customer in the top left picture because it's a posed picture. But this was Sophia, and Sophia was in charge of the shopping team. Sophia was quite a tricky person. Right from class 1, she was the sort of little girl who likes to stamp her foot and insist that she's right. And so she had the unenviable task of negotiating with the bakery. The bakery we bought our rolls from was quite they weren't the most professional setup, shall we say. They were delicious rolls, but they didn't always listen very carefully or read the order sheets very carefully. So at least once a fortnight, they got our order wrong. And Sophia now had to learn to be diplomatic with these people, with adults who had made a mistake. But because, of course, if we'd lost that bakery as a supplier, we were really stumped because they were the only bakery in the village. So we needed to work with them. So she had to find a way of saying to adults respectfully that they were wrong. And so she learned an incredible amount of social skills and I had this wonderful experience that when we had a 3-week holiday and I came back from the holiday on a Saturday and I thought, oh no, I shouldn't have left the company out of my mind for this long because it's going to be Monday and at least 50 children will come to school expecting to buy a sandwich from us and we haven't prepared ourselves because we've all been on holiday. What are we going to do? This is going to be really bad. And so I rang Sophia, who was in charge of this shopping team, and I said, Sophia, I've made a mistake. We won't be able to open on Monday. What do we do with the people who are relying on us? And she said, what are you talking about? It's all sorted. We met last Thursday with the shopping team and we ran the school caretaker and he opened the door for us and we went to the shop and we stocked up the fridge and we're all ready to go for Monday. And I thought, oh, wow, you're 12 years old and you've just shown me how to run life, actually. And it's such a touching story in my professional biography. That's where you want to get to as a teacher, where you really can take a step back and you say, you've got this. I don't need to hold this. You've got this. Yeah, it's very special if you can see education like this because this picture we see far too often, I think. I think this is where this narrative of little Einsteins takes too many children. You have to be outstanding, you have to be a high achiever, and we only have one way of determining that, which is pass or fail. And this is where it leaves too many children, and quite frankly, even one child is one too many, that finds their only relief in the bathrooms where at least nobody sees them cry. As a parent, as a grandparent, and as a teacher, this is kind of what I want. I want the young people that I've brought into the world to work together, a bit like those kindergarten children I showed you earlier on. This is the equivalent of that. With big tools, making a difference in the world, doing things, and enjoying the connection with things. Education shouldn't be about learning stuff. It should be about doing stuff and learning while doing. Because, you know, this is what life is like. Life is a portfolio. From the moment I start learning till the moment I breathe my last breath, I learn and I store things and I develop my agency and my competency. And what we need is a school system that respects that and honors that. And I think Waldorf Education does that. So I hope I haven't disappointed you too much by not focusing a lot on the curriculum. For me, it was more important to highlight this morning the reason we try to do things differently. And there are 1 million Waldorf pupils in the world, and there are 40,000 Waldorf teachers. And of course, they don't all work in the same way. But it's not all about playing. And even the playing is at least partly about learning. So thank you very much for listening. And I'm sorry I went over time a little bit. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have as well.